There are a lot of people out there who want to make money shooting documentaries, but just don't know where to start or what to focus on. If you're watching this video, then you probably have some interest in how to make filmmaking a career. And as someone who never went to film school, I didn't pick up a camera until I was in my mid-20s, but went on to sell films to Netflix, the New York Times, and POV while shooting films for HBO, Frontline, and others. So I have learned a thing or two about the skills you need to succeed as a documentary cinematographer. Today, I want to talk through some of the main skill sets you need to make documentary filmmaking a career, and specifically as a cinematographer. If you're new here, my name is Curtin Sheldon, and I'm an ASC award-winning cinematographer, an Oscar-nominated and 2-time Emmy-winning filmmaker. I started this channel to help people who want to become filmmakers and offer advice on how to make that happen. So like this video and subscribe to learn more about doc filmmaking, cinematography career and tips and tricks, and so much more. The main structure for telling documentary stories is often through interviews. As someone who has directed and produced a half a dozen films that almost have no interviews on screen, this goes against my own personal approach a bit. But as a documentary cinematographer who wants to work and get paid to shoot films, I had to come to terms with the fact that many documentaries require interviews to tell their story. And being able to light, design, and film compelling interviews in a variety of locations with a limited amount of time is one of the most important skills for a documentary cinematographer to enhance. After my 2 breakout films that we sold to Netflix, I received quite a few calls from shows and films looking for a DP. But it was always my lack of cinematic interview setups that ultimately cost me some jobs. I was still getting work as a verite cinematographer, and that remains my bread and butter to this day, but I worked really hard to beef up my interview setups, trying out hundreds of different setups and consistently working to improve this part of my work. And now when producers call looking for DP, my interview examples are robust and haven't cost me a job in years. I think setting up cinematic interviews is one of the hardest things for beginners to grasp, as it covers lighting, lots of gear, grip, production design, 2 cameras, etc., etc. But once you have the basics down, it really becomes muscle memory. It is one of the main reasons why my first ever online course, the 10 Steps to Cinematic Interviews, specifically tackles this core skill for doc DPs. The course is a simple step-by-step process to go from ugly looking interviews to interviews that will get you hired and make you money, and really give you a career. On to my favorite part of documentary cinematography, capturing in-scene action. For a lot of people, this is the true art of documentary cinematography, the ability to capture life as it happens, all the drama, action, pain, excitement, and make it look beautiful.
You got 3 minutes to get through this. It changes everything for you.
Yes, sir.
You understand?
Yes, sir.
But you got
Like interviews, this is not an easy skill, and in many ways is way more difficult because not only do you have no idea what is going to happen, you have to shoot it in a way that can be edited together later. Filming great verite is all about intuition, patience, and controlled urgency. In interviews, you usually set up the interview in an hour or 2, and then sit back and just make sure the interviewee is in focus for a couple of hours. But verite is way more physically demanding. It requires you to move, constantly check and change your camera settings, and also keep other moving people in focus at all times and observe some very difficult things, all while holding a heavy camera package for long hours. You also do not know when the exact action that is most important is actually going to happen. So when things seem to lull or get boring, you can never let your guard down. You don't want to have your camera down or be fiddling with your settings or repositioning when the main action is happening. So your brain is always on, which can definitely be exhausting. If you want to be a documentary cinematographer, shooting in-scene drama is something you have to practice. You have to tune your ear to what is happening and always be ready to capture the decisive moment. Which brings me to covering a scene. Covering a scene is part of verite filmmaking, but it's its own special type of doc filmmaking. Often, these aren't the most exciting parts of documentary cinematography, but are one of the main ways to tell a story in doc filmmaking. This may just be a couple people sitting at a table, but if they're having an intense conversation that pushes the plot along, then you have to get that moment. And then you have to shoot it in such a way that it can be edited together later on. Early on in my career, I made the mistake of always focusing my camera on whoever was talking. But if you do that, once you get in the edit, you realize that it becomes almost impossible to edit down a 60-minute conversation into a compelling 90-second scene. So you have to learn how to correctly cover a scene. That means multiple angles, cutaways, lots of shots of people just listening, while all the while keeping your ears tuned to what is the most important in the story and then capturing that line on camera.
You ever thought about that?
If you want to have a career as a cinematographer and have the skills to make it happen, then by far the next most important aspect of getting hired is to focus on building relationships, primarily with directors who want to hire you. If you're the best doc cinematographer in the world, but an absolute nightmare to work with, then they'll just go to the second best doc cinematographer in the world. If you make successful films and win some awards, you will get cold calls and emails, but even then, they won't be all that consistent. Often, you'll work with the same people over and over again. For me, I have a filmmaking partner that I'm also married to, so we often work together. But I've also worked with the incredible director Amy Berg on 3 projects, including Phoenix Rising for HBO and the new Jeff Buckley biography that premiered at Sundance this year. For my branded content work, I have done the same short documentary series for Marriott International for 8 years in a row. 8 years. While I'll be the first to admit that I'm pretty terrible at networking, I live in West Virginia, when I do get a job, I not only do the best job I possibly can, I also make sure I make the producers and directors' jobs as simple as possible by being easy and hopefully fun to work with. My job is not only to capture the required visuals for the story, but also to alleviate as much pain as possible for the producing team, which is why it is sometimes required to be more than a DP. For a lot of fiction films and bigger budget projects, there are clearly defined roles. Everyone has their own separate job and the thing they need to accomplish. But on documentaries, that is not always the case. So as a documentary cinematographer, you need to be more than a DP. You can't always just do your one job and then sit back and watch the rest of the team scramble. You probably won't have an AC or a media manager, so those roles will often fall on you as well. As a 1-person or 2-person team, it has often fallen on me to capture sound as well. You might think that once you get to a certain level, your role will be more focused, but that isn't always the case. On the doc series I DP'd for HBO, I had to run sound because we were shooting during the pandemic, which means I had to run 3 lavs to our 3 characters while also having a shotgun mic on my camera, monitoring 4 channels of audio while also filming verite, setting up interviews, and covering scenes. On a documentary feature I am on right now, I often run sound in order to have a more intimate 1-person or 2-person team in order to capture more authentic scenes and action. Outside of sound, it may also fall on you to do some producing or even some mild directing. Again, I've worked and shot on films where the director wasn't always able to be present, so it fell on me to interact with the participants, create schedules, build relationships, and do things that don't normally fall to the cinematographer. But there is no normal in documentaries, so you have to be more comfortable with being more than a DP. Finally, if you want to be a doc cinematographer, you have to work. And I don't mean you need to constantly be networking and schmoozing to get a bunch of jobs. I mean you have to work, you have to shoot, you have to make films, and you have to put yourself out there. If your reel consists of fun travel videos of you and your girlfriend or boyfriend jumping off waterfalls, nobody is going to hire you to shoot a documentary. You have to make films about real people going through real struggles and triumphs. You have to be out in the world with a camera and documenting true action. You have to be setting up and refining your interview setups and covering scenes. If you're not consistently and actively shooting films, nobody is going to hire you to shoot films. Seems pretty obvious, but there are a lot of people that miss that point. For producers and directors, the only thing they care about when they're looking for a cinematographer to hire is their past work. Nobody's going to hire you solely based on your potential. So to be hired, you have to have past work. And if you aren't getting hired to shoot films or make documentaries, then go make your own. I did this for 6 years, making hundreds of shorts, 2 features, and tons of branded content work before someone first called me to hire me strictly as a cinematographer. So get out there and start working. I'll see you in the field.